In a span of 50 years, between 1900 and 1950, we went from loving aging to aging supposed to be a problem. And it has now launched a multi-trillion-dollar anti-aging industry. And so literally, the fear of aging is basically capitalist patriarchy.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining another recording of the Faith Talks podcast. Faith Talks exists to offer spiritual growth content to women of faith, and I'm your host, Jennifer R. Farmer. Now, if you've not tuned in for a while, you'll notice that we have a new format where we are actually showcasing the video recordings of these conversations. You can still join, whenever a podcast is uploaded, and you should be sure to continue to tell your friends about it. And by the way, if you've not already subscribed to Faith Talks, please do so wherever you get your content. So for today's conversation, we're going to talk about aging. And this isn't just because I recently turned 50. I've actually been fascinated with how we age, the stories we tell ourselves about aging, how we care for ourselves, and also cultivate relationships along the way. So I'm super excited to speak today with Karen Walrond. And you'll remember that she's been a guest on the Faith Talks podcast before. In fact, I think she was on Faith Talks right around a year ago. And at that point, we talked about her book, In Defense of Dabbling. Today, we're going to talk about her book, Radiant Rebellion, Reclaim Aging, Practice Joy, and Raise a Little Hell. Oh my gosh, that sounds like me. It also sounds like you, our entire audience. And obviously, it sounds like Karen. So before I invite Karen to the virtual stage or really begin the conversation, I want to tell you a little bit about her. So Karen is an award-winning author, leadership consultant, and attorney, and she's on a mission to create a kindness revolution. Doesn't our world need more of that? Her book, The Lightmaker's Manifesto, beckons readers toward lives of integrity, advocacy, and joy. Radiant Rebellion, a silver winner of the 2024 Nautilus Book Award, investigates how we can resist ageism, create powerful futures, and live a life filled with love and light along the way. Now, her most recent book, In Defense of Dabbling, which again, we've talked about that before, encourages self-compassion, self-transcendence through the power of intentional amateurism. I love that. I love all this. And her debut book, The Beauty of Different, is a chronicle of imagery, essays, and observations on authenticity, courage, and the concept that what makes us different also makes us beautiful. Karen, it's so nice to be in conversation with you once again.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be back.
So let's talk about Radiant Rebellion. I'd love to hear your own perspective on what the book is about. And I'm also curious to know why you wrote the book.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. I am so passionate about this particular subject. And the reason that I started writing it was the year that I wrote it, which would have been, 2023, I think was the year that I wrote the book, was a year, maybe it was 2022 actually, when I wrote the book. It was a year that I was turning 55. My daughter was 18 and about to graduate high school and go off to college, my only child, and my marriage was turning 20 years old. And it felt like whenever I told people about these things, the only thing people were happy about was the 20-year marriage, right? Like everybody was like, oh, your baby's leaving. I'm so sorry. Or, ooh, you're hitting double nickels, 55. Oh my goodness. How are you feeling about that? Right. And it confounded me because I've been a person who I've never had a problem with aging. I've always loved getting older. And also it appeared to me as I looked around for my friends who were, I guess, let's say within 10 years of my age, they were all doing amazing things. They were writing best-selling books and they were, one friend is creating a Broadway play and had just started doing, so all these people were doing these amazing things, yet everybody was telling me that because I was turning 55, it was time to slow down. It was time to be quiet. It was something to be upset about. The kid thing I found really weird because the way I saw it, like the goal had always been to get the kid out of the house and off to college and to study. Like that to me was a triumph. And it was so strange. So I really wanted to figure out like why the messaging around it was so depressing, even though my lived experience and the experience of my friends seemed the exact opposite. And also what a disservice that messaging was doing to people who were younger than me, who were like 29 or 39. And I would hear their fear about getting older. And I really wanted to sort of unpack that.
I love that. And you said that you were never afraid of aging. It was never something that, panicked you. Can you talk a little bit about that, like how you viewed it, that kind of thing?
Um, Let me think about. That's a really interesting question about why I did that. There were two things I think. First of all, I'm originally from the Caribbean, and I do think that in the Caribbean we have a slightly different outlook on aging, and really beauty, in general. I feel like when you come from a country that has a yearly carnival. I'm from Trinidad, and we have a huge carnival where people of all ages and sizes are in tiny bikinis and dancing in the streets. There's a certain embodiment of our beauty that I don't necessarily see in the U.S. or the U.K. So I think that's part of it. Also, I remember once, many years ago, maybe even 2 decades ago, we talked a little bit about this before we came on, about the fact that huge celebrations have never been a big part of of being celebrating my birthday. Even though I like my birthday, I'm too introverted to do that. And I had a friend once who said, "What are we going to do for your birthday?" And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't, I'm happy about it, but I don't. And she says, "Oh, well, we have to celebrate," she said, because she goes, "Your birthday is the only day that's 100% about you." She goes, "Even like Christmas, like that's about everybody. But this is the one day where everybody celebrates you. And so we need to do something for your birthday." And it really sort of hit me, like, if you think about it sort of cosmically, like the idea that all of these atoms came together to create just you, and in this one moment in time, and it will never exist again, right? You will never, like, that is something that you should celebrate. So I think that also helped. It was like, the fact that this singular event that is your life has come to be is so miraculous, and we should celebrate that. And the fact that in another year you get to celebrate another year of that, doing that, like, that's really, really big stuff. So I think it was sort of a combination of both of those things.
When you talk about celebrations, you and I have a lot in common. My family is also from the Caribbean, Barbados. But, you know, when I thought about getting older, it was kind of scary for me, for a lot of different reasons. One, I had three aunts who died before the age of 50. And so when I got close to the age of each aunt, I would be a little bit afraid. But I also decided, okay, well, I want to do something to mark 50. And so I planned a party. And then, there's a part of me that's an introvert. And as I got closer to the party, I was sharing with you that I was like, okay, what have you done? What were you thinking? There's going to be a lot of people who you need to speak with. What were you thinking? And so I was very nervous leading up to it. But then I thought, okay, well, how often does my family have a practice of celebrating? Intentionally gathering for joy, and not because something is wrong, but to intentionally gather. And I said, okay, no, I'm going to do this. And regardless of how sick it makes me in the moment leading up to it, I'm going to get through it. It's just a few hours. And so I planned a phenomenal party, if I may say so myself. And, I invited my friends who don't live in the area where I'm in. And even thinking about them coming in, I thought, wow, that's, it's amazing to be able to experience this milestone with people who've known me, some of them, 25, 30 years, right? And the great thing is, I think I was maybe one of the first ones in my friend group to turn 50. And so now we have all these milestones. And I'm really thinking about how you celebrate and how you mark these very important milestones as we age. And so, my question to you is, what rituals or practices do you adopt for yourself to mark different milestones as we grow in wisdom and as we grow in grace? I'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I did not know you were from Barbados. I actually just got back from Barbados. I'm a huge Barbados fan. We West Indians have to stick together, man. So, anyway, as far as celebration, well, I mean, I, like you, am an introvert, and frankly, I feel like I get more and more introverted the older I get. I actually think, like, I can sort of feel myself, getting happier with my own company, I guess is the way to put it. And so for me, it is actually, I have to be very intentional about getting out there because I think I can tend towards to being solitary a lot. And a birthday is a great way to do that. But like you, a party is totally overwhelming for me. Maybe when I turn 60, which is not too far from now, maybe I'll do something bigger, although I already have sort of something in mind for my 60th. Um, so I think it's important for us to celebrate our birthdays. As I mentioned, I have done things like solo travel with a bunch of books and journals, and gone to a really beautiful place for even just 2 nights or something like that, just to sort of be with myself. I have also done. I'm a big traveler. I love travel, so my husband and daughter and I have planned big travel um, places, often to the Caribbean, to celebrate milestones like that. This last year, so I turned 58 last summer, and I decided to celebrate with 31 days. Wait, so I'm born in July, so there's 31 days, so a month of daily delights. And they could be big or they could be small. So, like, one of the things, I had never had a facial before. So I treated myself to a facial one day. I also, sometimes it was just a walk. Sometimes it was, I don't have a huge sweet tooth, but um, I did buy myself a dark chocolate cupcake that I enjoyed by myself. I was like, I'm not getting this for my family, or this is for me. And just something really, really little every day. And I photograph, I'm a photographer, so I photographed my delight every day. And I had like 30 days of things that really made me happy. And that was really good. Like, I think actually that one might become a tradition for me. Because it's a lovely way to sort of remind yourself of how amazing your life is, right? Especially if you do it so it's not an expensive thing. Like, the facial was sort of expensive, but a lot of the things that I was doing, it was like, I don't know, a splash of flavored creamer in my coffee that day when I don't usually put creamer in my coffee, or whatever it was, just something I'm like, what can I do today that feels like fun? A nap would be something that I would do in a hammock or something. So that kind of celebration of yourself, I think, is really important. But I also, and we did talk about this. Um, I If you're an extrovert, then you should have the bash. Like, it should be something that really sort of fills you up, however that is. And so I never tell people like, oh, you have to travel, or you have to, because everybody's different. But the month of daily delights, I think, is a really good thing, because then you can sort of curate your own delights.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that the delights, they speak to you, right? It doesn't have to be anything super extravagant, but anything that you can derive joy from. So, and your skin looks fabulous, by the way.
Thank you very
Um,
much.
have you thought about the message that you're teaching or telling your daughter about aging from the standpoint of, as you adopt these different practices and as you celebrate the milestones in a way that feels comfortable for you, or even has how you approach aging, are you intentional with telling your daughter, like having dialogue about with your daughter about this, or is it more her learning by observation?
That's such a great question. I think that learning by observation is actually more powerful than talking about it. I think it's easy to sort of talk a good game, and then, still lament that a wrinkle shows up or something, like, or whatever. I mean, I don't do that. But, one of the things that I think, and this I'm very intentional about, is, all right, I'm going to break it down. So, one of the things that I learned in writing the book, in writing Radiant Rebellion, as I spoke to a woman, her name is Ashton Applewhite, and she's an anti-ageism activist. And one of the things that she taught me, which I think is really interesting, and I really hope that young people get this, right? She said, the older we get, the more diverse we get. And what she said was, if you think about it, 5-year-olds, no matter where they are, how they grow up, tend to have a lot more in common than 15-year-olds, than do 35-year-olds, than do 55-year-olds, because life experiences are different, right? So when you're 5, like, all 5-year-olds tend to be very, very similar. But then, because of health, because of money, because of access, because of where you live, because of gender identity, all these different things that start to come into play. So that by the time you get older, let's 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, you are pretty singular, right? Because nobody has the sort of life experience that you have. And I thought that's a really powerful way to think about aging, because when you think about it that way, you suddenly have a lot more agency in what 45, 55, 65, 75 looks like for you, right? Because trying to compete with other people is just, it's ridiculous. You are never, ever, ever going to be like the other person. And the longer time passes, the less likely that's going to happen. So to your question, what I like to do, and I think that the key to aging well is maintaining a sense of curiosity and a sense of learning. I think that ultimately that's what it's about, whether or not it's learning about your spirituality, learning about your physicality, learning about your health, getting curious about things that what can you do, what can't you do. And when I think about my daughter, like I hope that by the time I die, she thinks my mother was constantly learning about new things. My mother was constantly experimenting with new things. And the idea, and that she sees it, so that the idea of I'm too old to do that, or I'm too, seems absolutely preposterous to her, because she never saw me like hold back because I was like, oh, I'm too old for that, right? Which I really, really am very, very conscious of that. And so I think about things like, when I wrote the book in Defense of Dabbling, the most recent book, um, like I was trying out a bunch of different hobbies and seeing what stuck, and some things have stuck. And I've started this whole new thing in my late 50s, and I'm about to do an international move. I'm about to move to the UK. And so that's presenting all kinds of opportunities to experiment and redefine who am I as a person who lives in a different climate. How do I dress? What do I look like? What are the things I do on a daily basis? And I think that the idea of watching people older than you continue to evolve, my father-in-law, who's in his 80s, he's always been a painter, but now he like has a group of people that he meets with every week, and they paint together. And that sort of idea of not letting age define what makes you curious, I think is huge. And I think it's a great way to model it for our younger people.
Wow, I love all of that, and I love the fact that you're preparing to move abroad. This sentiment of, oh, I'm too old for this, or and sometimes it's not even like that, it's a question, like, are you too old for this? Should you be doing? And sometimes those questions, they come from our mind, but they've been planted by the culture, right? And so, do you feel like those questions are about fear, or do you, well, let me just say that, do you feel like those questions, those seeds, is it about fear?
Oh, you're about to get me up on a soapbox now. So, I love that you asked this question, because it was something that I was really interested in exploring when I wrote Radiant Rebellion, about whether or not we always feared aging. Like, what is that about? And I came across the research by a woman. Her name is Dr. Laura Hirschbein. She's a medical historian, psychiatrist, and she wanted to know the answer to that question. And so what she did was she looked up popular magazines between 1900 and 1950 to see what the articles were like about aging, because she figured if it was a popular magazine, it would capture sort of the zeitgeist of the time. And this is really interesting. So in 1900, most articles about aging were written by people who were in advanced age, so 70s, 80s, 90s. And the people who wrote those articles generally loved aging, right? They thought, aging is great. Yes, of course, there's some pains and aches and some ailments, but what I feel as far as a sense of self, or confidence or wisdom, far exceeds any of these other things, and aging is amazing, right? Fast forward, two world wars and a Great Depression, right? And what's happening is now all of these people, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, who are continuing to work, um, they're realizing that because of the jobs are harder to find for 30-year-olds, right? 30-year-old men, let's just say, the US government decided, you know what, we're going to have a mandatory retirement age, because these young men have families that they need to feed. They have young kids and they have wives and everything else. So if you're over 65, you need to get out of the workforce, right? So that these 30-something-year-olds can get jobs. So now what happens is that older people in the over 65 are now burdens on society because they are no longer, and I'm using air quotes here, right? Burdens on society because they are not contributing to the economy, right? So we have that going on. Same time, back then, there was no such thing as geriatric medicine. And so child psychologists and pediatricians decided what they wanted to study what happens as you age. And they used as the standard of normal 5-year olds. So if you were not as agile as a 5-year old or as mentally quick as a 5-year old, you were now impaired. And now the popular articles are being written by these doctors who are saying, here's what's happening when you get older. You are impaired because you're no longer as agile and quick as a 5-year old, right? So now aging has become a problem. It's something that needs to be fixed. And now enter Clairol, literally. In the 50s, they say, well, you're working. You don't want people to know you're aging. It's time to start dyeing your hair. So in a span of 50 years, between 1900 and 1950, we went from loving aging to aging supposed to be a problem. And the amazing thing about that is it has now launched a multi-trillion-dollar anti-aging industry, right? And if they can convince you that you need to anti-age, they've got a customer for life, right? And so literally, the fear of aging is basically capitalist patriarchy, right? So when you start knowing all of that, right, and you realize that it has literally been created in order to continue to have a whole industry around it, and think of it like it's not just makeup and hair; it's anti-aging, like adventure travel, or like it's pervasive in everything that we do. So for me, yes, it's fear, but it's not fear because we individually fear it. It's fear because the culture has made it so that we fear it, right? And the truth of the matter is that when you look at the statistics, people are living longer than they ever have. People are living better than they ever had. The actual percentage of people with Alzheimer's is going down, not up. Like we tend to think of that. 80% of people live independently well. Although we all think, oh, at some point we're all going to have to be institutionalized and drooling in a corner somewhere of some institution. So all of these things have been sort of created to help this. Now, I say this, and I don't want people to think that what I'm saying is, so you could live and never feel any ailments and always be as spry as you were at 20. And like obviously your physical body there's going to be some wear and tear. But what's really important is to remember we've been aging since the day we were born, right? It's a full on evolution. And this is what happens. And the idea of valuing, well, you're only viable when you're in your 20s or your 30s, and after that, it's all over. That has been absolutely, we've been conditioned in that. And we all have to fight that. One thing before you ask another question that I think is really interesting. The same woman, Ashton Applewhite. Now, remember, I told you I never feared aging. And when I was talking to her, and I was very cocky about it because I interviewed her for the book and I was thinking, oh, okay, I'll interview you and your wisdom can help other people. It won't help me because I'm so evolved, right? And I asked her, I said, so what is like some of the ageist thinking that you see that everybody is commonly does? And she goes, well, the way people use the words young and old. And I said, I mean, how's that problematic? Tell me more about that. She goes, well, for example, I hear people say all the time, I don't feel old. And I said, yeah, I say that all the time. What's the problem with that? She goes, well, I suspect when you say that, what you're saying is, I don't feel unsexy or I don't feel invisible. And I said, yeah, that's right. She goes, well, I don't know about you, but when I was 13, I felt unsexy and invisible. Those things are not age related, right? She goes, we use old as a shorthand for bad and young as a shorthand for good. And we don't even realize we're doing it. And when she said that, like the whole idea of young at heart, like when she said that, it was mind blowing to me because I know I've been doing that. So even with all my evolved ideas about it getting older, I realized that I had my own work with my own language to do. So yeah, I think it's fear, but it's so pervasive, and culturally inspired that it really takes a lot of dismantling of our own minds in order to not be afraid of it.
Absolutely. And I feel like we live in an ageist society. And so because we live in this ageist society, we probably all have to do work to unlearn and to rethink and to get curious. So I completely understand that. I'll share a quick story. You know, for my party, I got these fabulous shoes, and they had a heel on them. And one of my roommates from college, she came in for the party, and she stayed at at my house. And uh, the morning of the party, we're all getting ready, and so there are these fabulous shoes off to the side. And my niece was there also. My niece came up from Atlanta, so my niece was there. And so my friend looked at me and she said, "Are those your niece's shoes?" And I said, "No." I said, "Girl, those are my shoes." And she's like, "You're gonna wear it?" Absolutely, I'm gonna wear I'm gonna wear those. And I kind of chuckled because I thought, I've certainly had these thoughts in my mind. I'm not like you. I have been a little bit afraid of aging, right? But I've had these thoughts in my mind, especially around clothes. Is this an appropriate outfit for me? Well, what does this outfit say? And even with shoes, I've looked at shoes and say, no, no, you can't do that. But with those shoes, like, oh, I'm absolutely going to wear them. It's not like I'm going to be standing for 10 hours. But I thought that was funny that the assumption was like, no, you can't do that, or you're not going to do that. And again, we've all been guilty. But let me ask you this: as you've looked back at your journey, and even what you were saying about um, Clairol and fear, have you had to do any work with yourself to say, okay, well, nope, we're not going to worry about this, or I'm going to fully embrace this aspect of aging, or this aspect of learning more? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, well, one thing, I mean, since we talked about Clairol, let's talk about dyeing your hair, right? Like, obviously you can see me and I don't dye my hair, but I did for a long time. And for me, what was interesting about that is I dyed my hair not to hide the gray so much. Not, that's not true. Not certainly to hide the gray, but not because I was worried about looking older. For me, it had become almost second nature. It's like, it was like grooming, right? Like you shower every day, you brush your teeth every day, and every 6 weeks you dye your hair. That's how you do it, right? Um, and I decided right about when I was writing the book, I'm like, you know what? I had always said as soon as my hair comes in, because I thought my hair is like patchy gray and it's going to look weird, and I don't want to do that. But then I thought, you know what? I don't even know what it's going to look like, so I'm going to cut it all off. So I went for the big chop, and let's see how it comes in. And the worst thing that'll happen is I'll just dye it again. Like, it's just dye. I'll just do it. Um, what has been really interesting for me is that I get far more compliments with it undyed than dyed. And I was like, for me now, I will say this. I am not a person that will tell everybody you should not dye your hair, right? Like, I think we are living, as you say, in a very ageist society, and there are some really big repercussions. Like, I've had friends who are single that say, if I don't dye my hair, I'm not going to get dates on the apps, right? Because it's going to make a difference. And so I could be keeping myself from real opportunities for love and connection because of that. I have another friend of mine who was an anchor person on the news, and she was like, they'll fire me if I don't continue to. So, like, for sure, there are all kinds of great reasons why you want to keep. But what I say, and when I talk about the radiant rebellion, right? The rebellion is when you make a decision, whether or not it's to dye your hair, whether or not it's to do Botox or whatever, whatever the thing is, like, take a moment and interrogate yourself about, why am I doing this? What is it I'm afraid of? And then understand it, right? Like, understand your reasons for doing this. So for me, like, I work for myself. I'm a writer. Like, there was nothing, I'm married. So it wasn't like I was on the apps or anything. Like, there was not going to be any repercussions for me to try it. Right. And it works for me. And as it is, when I dyed my hair, I always dyed it black. Like, I just dyed it the color it always was. And this feels really punk rock for me because this is the first time it's been a color that's not, right, the black. And so I really sort of dig it. And I mean, literally, I get compliments. And I don't even think that the compliments has to do with the fact that I have great hair. I mean, I just have hair. But I think it's so rare, especially in media. Everybody is either they look like they're 25 or they look like they're 80, right? You don't really see people in midlife in media that go silver, right? Like, they're all like Betty White or they're J-Lo or Halle Berry, right? And so I think what people are reacting to is more like, it's so unusual, right? To see somebody who's clearly not in their 80s, but also has silver hair, and that's not a common thing. It is becoming more common for sure, but at the beginning it wasn't. And I think that that's for me. I really had to get comfortable with that, right? Like I had to be like, okay, it's not about grooming, right? Hair, dyeing your hair is not grooming. It's just a preference, and really sort of interrogate why is that important to me and what's important. And I think that's really important.
I love that, encouraging ourselves to ask ourselves questions and to interrogate, because I think it's really easy to get into a pattern where we're doing something and we're not conscious of why we're doing it, or whether or not we want to continue doing it. So I love that. Let me ask you this question: how have your spiritual practices shifted or grown? Like, what's been the evolution of how you see yourself connected to the world around you, to the divine? Like how has that shifted?
Yeah, I love this question. So I grew up very, very Catholic. My mother's Catholic, my father's Anglican. But we were very much a fish on Fridays kind of family, and we had to do all the sacraments, and Catholicism is I don't have a lot of experience with other faiths, but Catholicism for sure is very rite heavy, RITE heavy, right? You go in no matter where you are in the world. If you go to a Catholic mass, even if it's not in English, you will know exactly what part of the mass we're in, right? Like it's very, very ritualistic, which can be very beautiful, right? Um, but for me, what it meant was that I didn't really think about why those rituals were important. It was just sort of what you did. You went to on Sunday, and then you walked in and you sang the homily, and you stood at this place, and you kneeled at this place, and you passed the peace at this point, and you said the Apostles' Creed at this place, and you just did it. And it was very, very ritualistic. As I've gotten older, I will tell you, I don't go to church very often at all anymore. And yet I start every morning with prayer, and I close every day with prayer. And for me, spirituality has become a far more personal thing for me. I I feel more connected to the divine um, through my own practices. I also feel connected to the divine in certain parts of the world. Barbados. I just got back, and there is nothing that feels more spiritual to me than being in the Caribbean Sea. And for me, it's not just that it's the ocean and it's vast and it's beautiful, but also it's connecting to ancestors. It's connecting to, there's just so much about being in the Caribbean that has nothing to do with the cocktails and the blue ocean, and has everything to do with, um, the enslaved people that I'm descended from, and in my case, from Trinidad, and the South Asian people that I'm get connected to, and all of these things that I think sort of feed my own spirituality. So it's definitely evolved um, into a more personal way. I don't know if that's right or not. I guess maybe that's that Catholic guilt, and that I don't know that if it's right, but it works for me.
And then what about your friendships? How have your friendships evolved? And I'll tell you why I asked this question. I feel like my friendships are evolving, and even how I relate to my friends. So one of my friends who came in for my party, just all of them are very, very dear. But when she left, I said, I miss you. I really miss you, and I love you. And my daughter overheard me telling, she's like, you told your friend. I said, absolutely. I love her. I don't know if I would have been as forthcoming with saying that, just I love you, I miss you, I don't feel like I've gotten enough time with you. I don't know if I would have been as forthcoming in saying that in 20 years ago. And so I'm just wondering, have you noticed any shifts in your friend groups and how you relate to them?
That is so beautiful. How lucky your friend is to have you. That's really, really lovely. I love this question because it's something that I'm really wrestling with personally right now. Certainly friendships are more important to me than ever. I will also say that I don't know that I've been great at friendship in the past. for a variety of reasons. My father, when I was growing up, was an executive in an oil company, and we moved internationally every 2 years. And sort of, I think to protect myself, because it meant leaving people behind, I've been pretty guarded. I think in creating friends, because, well, what's the point if 2 years from now I may never see these people again? Is sort of my thinking as a kid. And I'm currently about to move again, right? I'm about to move to another country, even though I've lived in the United States now for 20 something years. Um, so I'm really sort of exploring, what does it mean to leave a country and the friends that I have here behind, and how do I continue to cultivate and care for and nurture those friends when there's literally going to be an ocean between us? And how do I make new friends, right? Like, how do I go to this new place where I don't work in a corporation anymore, where I'm going to have daily, you know, visits with people every single day? And how do you create community moving to a whole new culture? Um, so I would say that now I think friendship has become more important to me. Um, but I also admit to the fact that in a lot of ways it feels very new for me as well. I am mindful. I have a couple of friends who I know are lifelong friends. I suspect are lifelong friends more out of their efforts, that they happen to be very, very good at nurturing friendships, and they won't let me go, which is lovely, right? It's a lovely sense of belonging that I haven't had before. And I think of them and think, how can I be more like them in nurturing my friendships with them, and also creating new friendships. So I have to admit that I don't have a whole lot of wisdom on it right now, because it is something very, very new for me.
And I'm sure that we have audience members who could very much relate to that, right? So thank you for sharing. As you thought about this conversation and our time together, was there anything that was on your heart that you wanted to be sure that you raised that perhaps I didn't ask you?
I mean, I one of the things, and we touched on this, the idea of aging as being sort of yours to create. I think that's a really, really important and important point that I think we all forget, including myself, that we think uh, what age looks like is an inevitability. And I think the exact opposite is true. I think what your age looks like is 100%, 100% in your own control. Yes, you're going to have challenges, that we all do, right? And there are going to be health challenges, and there's going to be life challenges. Um, but the way that you decide how to meet those challenges, the way that you decide how those challenges inform your own identity, and also the blessings, because we often forget that in addition to the challenges, some really amazing things are going to happen to us, and beautiful things are going to happen to us. And figuring out how to pull all of that into the identity of what it means to be a person of a certain age with a certain background, and the fact that we can do that 100% of our thing. I think that's something we all forget. I think it it powers the fear that younger people have when they turn 29 or 39, or one of those nines where they're like, oh my god, what does that mean? But I think it's also, when we get older, we feel resigned. Well, I don't have the power to do that anymore, I'm running out of time. And I think there is never a moment in time where you can't hone or create, or like, shape your own identity. And what does it look like, and what does it mean? I just don't think I think a 90-year-old can do that. um, and I think that's a really, really important thing, that if there's one thing I want somebody to walk away from listening to us, it's the idea, or the question, how can I hone my own identity based on my past experience and who I want to be in the future?
I absolutely resonate with that. I believe it. And I think it's something that we should be reminded of, because it's at any stage in life, it's easy to feel like, okay, well, this is what my life has always been, and this is what it's going to be, without appreciating, nope, you can write a new story, you could change the script, you could change this chapter. So I appreciate that advice and that reminder. It's been so great being in conversation with you again. And I'm sure you'll write another book and I'll find a reason to reach out and to have you back on. But thank you very, very much.
Oh, such a pleasure. And I hope you do invite me back on. It's always lovely to speak with you.
Not because suffering is new, not because pain is rare, but because the institutions once trusted to ease that suffering are vanishing. And in the wake of that collapse, God is asking, who will welcome the stranger? Who will feed the hungry? Who will care for the sick? We will. This moment matters.
Westpath is proud to sponsor United Women in Faith's Assembly 2026. We're inspired by your mission to equip and educate women and girls to change the world. Westpath has cared for those who serve for over 100 years by providing the United Methodist Church and faith-based organizations with retirement and health benefits and values-aligned investing solutions. Visit the Westpath booth at Assembly 2026 for soul care resources and sustainable investment information.
At JP Morgan Chase, we believe everyone deserves access to the tools and guidance for financial health. Our community and business development team meets people where they are, right in their neighborhood. Our locally hired community managers work directly with community members, leaders, and small businesses. Our mission is to pave the way for a better tomorrow through financial education and partnership, empowering communities one relationship at a time.